It's 9 a.m. and we are legal to start business. I'll call this meeting to order. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. If we would, let's start with our prayer and pledge. Mr. Kellenberger, would you mind offering up?
Yes, sir. I appreciate the opportunity. May the Lord be with you. Let us pray. Almighty God, Heavenly Father, send down upon those who hold seat on this council the spirit of wisdom, charity, and justice, that with steadfast purpose they may faithfully serve on this council to promote the well-being of all the people who live in our community and the people who visit our community. Help them to balance the weight of the influences on their thought processes so they can make the best decisions for all concerned. And as always, help us to treat everyone with patience and fairness and kindness. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, it looks like we do have a quorum present. We'll open this up for public comments. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the council? Okay, seeing none. Approval of the minutes. Do we have, the chair would entertain a request to approve the minutes from the May 8, 2025 TDC meeting? Moved and seconded. All in favor of adoption of the minutes, say aye. Aye. Show that done. All right, now to offer the financial report, we'll have Summer Alford. Ms. Alford, you're recognized.
Good morning, council members. Summer Alford. Sorry about that. Summer Alford with the Office of Management and Budget. For the month of March, total TDT expenditures amounted to $3,101,167. Looking at the budget report, you can see the year-to-date actual expenditures totaled $24,625,837. For the month of March, total TDT collections amounted to $5,053,554. Total revenue for the month, including interest and collections, is $5,444,386. TDT collections for the South Walton District for the current year equaled $14,610,714. This represents a decrease of 9.2% when compared to the prior year. TDT collections for the North Walton District for this year equaled $147,659. When compared at a 2% rate, this represents a 7.8% decrease when compared to the prior year. Reserves for the period amount to $140,846,251. This leaves an unassigned fund balance after deductions for projects, encumbrances, and beach renourishment of $52,495,022. I will now respectfully request the approval of the financial report.
Are there any questions for Mrs. Alford? Any questions? Any comments? Chair would entertain a motion to approve the financial report for the month of March.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Having made the motion and having a second, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Show that done. Thank you, Mrs. Alford. New business. Matt, you want to come up and present the TDC recommendation?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Chair, Council members. Matt Algren, Tourism Director for the record. I guess what I would say is to kind of kick us off, if it's the will of the Council, maybe we just kind of pick up where we left off last week, Wednesday, and kind of start that discussion, because whether it's the continuation of the workshop or just the discussion of the budget period, I think it's all the same conversation. So that would kind of be my request if you all are amenable to that idea. And we'll just keep that conversation going.
Sounds good. Ms. Edwards, you were kind of leading that effort last week.
Yeah, so, thank you. I wanted to, before we start, if Clay can let us know so that the council knows exactly what we need to put out today so that the commissioners have a budget in a timely amount, and then also the process. So if we make changes today, then what happens to the budget? Does it come back to us? And so I just want to have that overlay and instruction.
Absolutely. So the board works through a process they call budget scrubs. Those are the internal county meetings that each department goes through, presenting the budget to finance and OMB effectively, and then to present that back to the board at the board's budget workshops. By the time we get to September and the official public hearings to adopt the budget, all of that's set out. So generally, it is best because we function a little different than any other county department. We're not public works. We have a TDC council that approves this budget, and you have to do that in a public meeting. It is generally best that you do that as early into the summer as possible, June, no later than July, but ideally it would be this month. We would send a budget out, whether it is from today's meeting or at another meeting before the end of this month, so that finance can work through it with Matt, make sure everything is in proper order. If there are questions from Melissa and the OMB team, they can be sent back. And so it's possible you could see that with additional questions or feedback, but in all likelihood, it's something that will then go to the board. Now, historically, what has happened is, unlike the standard budget scrub, once it is in full working order, it is presented at a BCC meeting for their approval as part of the overall consideration. And so it is almost a standalone budgetary function that the BCC engages in with you. And then they could well send it back if they have questions or concerns. I can't recall the BCC having whole cloth sent a budget back. I don't recall them doing very much regarding ever sending back what the TDC's approved in terms of marketing plans or other plans of that nature. But what I would recommend today is that if we can agree on a budget or agree on a recommendation, even if there's some, hey, we couldn't agree on this issue, but we want the board to take that issue up, to go ahead and do that today. If not, if we're unable to reach agreement today, I highly encourage this board to schedule a special meeting, not a workshop, because we'll need action within the next 3 weeks to get this done. The reason for that is I want this council to have every opportunity, should OMB or should the BCC want further feedback or send this back for more consideration. We can't be doing that in August and September once the DR 420 forms to the state of Florida, the Department of Revenue, have been sent out, total budget numbers have been calculated. We start getting very compressed on our decision-making time frame. And unfortunately, this is also a function of the every other month meeting. By the time we get to August, we're a little too late to be rehashing our budget. So that would be what I would recommend the next steps are. I would expect that if the board approves the budget today, Matt and our team will meet with Melissa, go through that with Melissa, Devin, and the O&B team, make sure everything's in order, and then they'll provide you any feedback that was received there, but then submit it to the board for their consideration and approval. Matt is obviously at budget scrubs, as every executive director attended before, but I want to be very clear. It's not a situation where he's able to stand in front of the board like the public works director, and I'm picking on Mr. Wright just as one example. Well, sure, we can cut this project, or sure, we can cut that project. This guy doesn't have that authority because you're the one who set it. So we need to give him as much information and as firm of a budget as possible so the board understands that's what the recommendation is. So any other questions on that at this point?
No, thank you. So if the chair and council will indulge me to some extent so that we have kind of an action and next steps, I really wanted to take a moment to think through again with the numbers, looking that we're 9% down. This budget overall shows flat line from last year. But I think that overall, since we've had a time to digest kind of how each department is, and how much they have allocated within that budget, having that kind of, that 9% at this point, obviously knowing season is coming, and we're having some last-minute bookings that are really great. I think y'all have probably experienced that. But really trying to assess where our priorities are. I know that we had the Sheriff's Department and code compliance come in, $10 million of our budget right there. I think that it needs a deeper dive to see whether there is any type of overlap. And then also really looking at how many individuals overall, salary-wise. So how many people are we gonna have in the beach between code compliance and sheriff? Because I think there's some opportunity to cut there, and not take away any services, for our area. But I think that if we look at overall where our priorities are, and I think this is from our last couple of meetings, number one, it's not currently in the budget, but in terms of reserve for the future. Right now, we're somewhat guessing what our reserves should be for beach operations. I'd like, and it wouldn't be ready for this budget necessarily to outline, but I'd like for us to put some money aside so that we can have some type of, not necessarily audit, but estimation as to what we would really need for reserves. So in terms of what it would cost to replace walkovers, we have a 6 month, salary operations, I believe, in the budget. I'd like to have Zender put together some information as to what emergency marketing would look like, our PR company, to see what kind of emergency that would be. So I don't know how much money that would necessarily be to have someone provide that, but right now we're just somewhat guessing what our reserves should be. And so I don't know in terms of where that would fall in the budget, but I think that's one of our number one priorities, is that if a storm or if something were to happen, that we have an accurate amount of money year over year. And I don't believe we've done that in years past. So I don't know where exactly that would be. Would that be in the administration budget if we put something to the side there?
I think that'd be appropriate, Matt.
Okay. And then the other, in terms of what all we've kind of discussed as well as some of the priorities, beach operations continues to be a priority. So if we can, and Brian, if you don't mind sharing your budget proposal and for us to talk through that, because I think that we really need to try to redirect some of those funds over to him. I know that we've made mention several times, focusing on payroll and wages, but if we look at our slide, there's actually a $100,000 decrease from last year to this year in that designation. So I think if we start there, as being one of our absolute priorities, we can at least have an action item. If that's okay with the chair and council members.
Mr. Kellenberger?
I was trying to use that lapel microphone, but it was problematic, so I'll come to the podium. So the beach operations budget traditionally comes out of two of the accounts. That is the beach operations account and the high impact penny that we set up several years ago. The high impact penny was set up to absorb the capital improvement projects, because we recognize that the beach operations account, when I say account, there's like 9 sub-accounts where we collect our different functions, expenditures in. Mine is the 41010 account, that's beach operations, and then the 41090 account is the high impact penny. Throughout the years, we have moved personnel expenses either into admin or into the appropriate accounts where they're actually expended. This last 2 years, that's what we've done. And so if you look, one of my biggest expenditures is personnel. I have 60 employees within the beach maintenance department. That's beach specialists, beach techs, crew leaders, assistant crew leaders, managers of such, to do our core function of keeping the beach clean and the beach and bay facilities in good shape. The other area of personnel is our TRAM program, And Tiffany, that's where the decrease came in last year, is there was a change in the original concept of what would the beach transportation program look like. All right, so when I first set it up, or was asked to set it up, I took over what I call the point A to point B Great Beach Tram. And we have, and it's we, the county, county leaders, tourism leaders, have over several years talked about a beach transportation system in an east-west format. The basic premise is if we can get people to ride our tram, maybe they'll quit driving on 30A, and maybe they'll quit bringing as many cars as they bring, and that helps to offset some of those short-term rental impacts or tourism impacts that we suffer in our community. So we set up a program recognizing as Great Beach parking as a central hub, and we would go east and west out of there. The reduction came in a change to an east route. Discussions with the state park system, they were not going to change their format of when their parking lot is full, they close their gates. And then we lost the Van Ness Butler Regional Beach Access. We still have the parking lot, but we don't have the beach access. And the third stop was going to be in Seaside. It didn't make any sense to just go to Seaside. So I altered that, and in that discussion, we reduced what was the original conceptual amount of employees down, and that's where that $100,000 difference is. Our routes are now westerly, and they go to regional beach accesses, and they make a loop, all right? And so you're looking there, we have, I believe it's 42 or 52 total employees for Beach Tram. We don't have but about half of those filled right now. And the reason we have that many is we're anticipating the opening of 393. The Great Beach parking lot is practically complete. We're in our last stages. 393 will be opened up in August. And so that would be the start of a east-west format. Right now it's point A to point B. It will probably be point A to point B at Ed Walton until next season. We've had some difficulty getting the tram vehicles for this program, and so I'm not going to have those probably till September. So it looks like, you know, a soft rollout during the off-season, and then a big grand opening next March 1st. But we have enough employees built within this budget to handle what we anticipate we would like to do with the westerly east-west routes. Just for your own information, that would be out of Great and Central to Blue Mountain Beach, to Gulfview Heights, on to Ed Walton, 393 parking, and then turn around and make those stops going back. We've got it timed out so that it works as a traditional transportation system, scheduled route, defined stops, so that people can plan their day around that bus. The idea is park people centrally, bus them to the regional beach accesses. We may look at adding Spooky Lane in there because we have 1,000 feet of public beach at Spooky Lane, but it is a neighborhood beach access, and it's 1 block or 2 blocks off 30A. Out of 393, we'll go to Fort Panic, Dune Allen, turn around, or Edward Lane, Fort Panic, Dune Allen, turn around, and come back through that, and it'll run that circuitous route the same way the one out of Great Beach does. And then we need to start looking at how do we increase that, because I do believe that that is part of the answer of congestion on 30A and the need for public parking. Let's centralize them and bus them to where we want to go. The other part, like I said, is if we can get a viable transportation system running, the 7-day visitor would have cause to not bring as many cars. I know there's other factors that causes them to bring as many cars, but pain is the biggest catalyst for change, and there's certainly pain in driving down 30A and Scenic Gulf Drive and looking for that parking place that doesn't exist if you're going to a public facility or a resort community that offers entertainment and dining or whatever. There's other benefits to it as well, but that's the basic premise of it. That's where, so 2 of the largest expenditures are in personnel. The 3rd largest expenditure is in other services, and that is our gateway destination improvement programs where we've taken on enhanced landscaping, and that is on Highway 331 and Highway 98 and the multi-use path landscape contracts. You'll see that in some other smaller contracts that we have for other services. suck up about $2 million of traditionally what would be about $10 to $11 million of what I'm allotted in the first two pennies. Okay, the other ones down there are basic costs of our existing facilities. So you'll notice we have RBAs and MBAs times the number we have in there, and I have a unit price. Depending on the age of that facility is what causes expenditures to be what they are, either less or greater. I don't have any really hard data on does Ed Walling cost X amount of dollars per year. Its boardwalk is fairly new. At some point in 2017, 2018, we started rebuilding all the boardwalks. I got about half of them done before COVID hit, and we put that on hold. We're going to restart that here in the near future. In between then, some other larger projects have come into play. Y'all have seen most of them on my slides. You have a list of partial of them in here. As you can see, the encumbrance, as we call it, is going to take a lot of those reserves. Every project I do now comes out of reserves, but it's money that we put in reserves earmarked for those projects or a capital improvement project. It came out of the appropriate penny, according to Clay and to Melissa. So Clay tells us how we can spend the money, and Melissa tells us how much money we have to spend. The other things that I have within my budget are just the basic stuff: communication services, fuel, utilities, includes our garbage collection. So we have Waste Management is our service provider. We collect it off the beach, and at our bay accesses, we bring it to a couple of centralized locations where there's either compactors or there's open top dumpsters, and they get it up to the landfill for us. Professional services typically include what I call miscellaneous design or look-ats, feasibility studies, conceptual design studies, constructability studies, and that's where we have an opportunity to purchase a piece of land or improve a piece of land that we already have, and we're not ready to go into a full-blown design and permit. Commissioners, council simply want to know, Brian, what can we do, and approximately what would it cost to do it. That's where I collect that in professional services. Fuel, that makes our trucks and heavy equipment run all year long. Printing and binding, we do a lot of signage, miscellaneous printing for presentations or whatever. Training, I put a lot of money in training because I believe that my job is more than daily operations or operations of a county department. I believe that as a manager or director, you should take a great interest in the people that work with you and help them to better themselves, even if it means them moving on. So I attempt to get people that come to work with me to take this additional training. A lot of times we have surplus in that, but I'd like to keep money in there for the people that do take advantage of it. I believe it's very important for recruitment and retainage. Tires, we had some discussion last time about tires. In this budget, we have 40 grand. We go through tires because we run them at about 20 PSI for the vehicles that go on the beach. We don't have the opportunity to air them up when we get off the beach. We wear them out pretty quickly. Other current charges, those are just miscellaneous expenditures. It's a drop in the bucket. I hate to say it that way, but it is. The rest of it's operating expenses. We have capital, outlays for machinery and trucks each year. We have about a 3-year rotation on our beach trucks, a 5-year rotation on trucks that don't go on the beach. Our mid-sized to heavy equipment, we keep it as long as we can until it becomes more expensive to keep it than to get something new. I don't have a whole lot of heavy equipment. We have skid steers, a mini EX or mid-size X. We acquired some paving equipment over the last couple of years to do miscellaneous multi-path repairs. It became apparent to me that wholesale replacement of multi-use path is not going to happen. There's always something else that has to be combined with it with another department, either initiative or program. In other words, I can go redo multi-use path, but if Public Works is going to come in and do stormwater systems and road work, it doesn't make much sense. We ought to do that together. And so we adopted that about 8 years ago, is that if we're going to do 30A improvements, let's do it all at one time. We have a multi-use path repair project later this year because we simply have to repair the path in Seagrove because it looks like third world country. I relented on my concept of, no, I'm not doing patch and repair anymore. If we're going to do multi-use path, we're going to do it right. But we're to the point now where it's dangerous. People are getting themselves hurt. Like I say, equipment is usually a big expenditure, but after 3 years on the beach, our beach trucks are, they may look good on the outside, but the frame, the undercarriage, the components that are exposed to it, even though we wash them every day, and I have one full-time mechanic that does the best he can, we have a pretty good proactive measure on that. But don't buy a beach operations truck at an auction. Word to the wise. They have low mileage, but it's funny, my mechanic pointed out to me, he said, you know, Brian, with the hours they have on them, it really equates to, even though they have 40,000 miles, it equates to about 300,000 miles with the hours that are actually on it. Our mechanic is ASE certified, and we have all the shop equipment that we can diagnose and fix and repair and all that. Very proactive in our department because it's 10 times harder to retrieve a truck off the beach than it is off the side of the road when it breaks down. So I don't like them to break down. Plus, I tend to get on Facebook whenever we have one broke down on the beach. So rule number 1 in beach ops, we got one on the beach, all hands on deck. Let's get it off before we get on Facebook. So, like I said earlier in my statement, we had expected the high-impact penny to start absorbing really future capital improvement projects. Unfortunately, that penny is now totally consumed with law enforcement, code enforcement, the various departments within those departments, and also the transportation program that is somewhat of an abbreviated program. The good thing is we have stuck some money back over the last 2 years that we haven't been anticipating the TRAM program. So I expect to be told that there is some money in reserves that can be used as we roll this thing out this year or full-time next year, and then we start to expand it. But one thing I would like to make clear to everybody in this room and that's paying attention on live stream is that we got to pay close attention to the facilities that we're building and the ongoing or the annual maintenance and operations cost. We can handle all of the beach accesses and parking lots that we've built so far. I've programmed that and know what escalators I will need in the future. Fortunately, over the last 2 years, I was able to improve staff or increase staff with the anticipation of taking these on. So the Grayton Beach parking, 393 parking, and the Driftwood parking that we're fixing to start, and we started this week, those can be handled with our staff. Part by beach operations, part by the transportation program people that will be responsible for those buildings. We have some other larger projects that we anticipate in the future. One of them is an administrative building that we've talked about for years. We went through a design and permit process, decided we didn't want to build that one. Me and Matt have been, I hate to say it, we've been slow walking a new design, mainly because of other things that have come up that we understand there may be motivation to do. And I'll be quite honest with you, there's not a project I do right now that doesn't create opposition from some group or another. It's becoming quite tiring, but that's what y'all asked me to do, so I continue to do it. The performing arts venue where we purchased 220 acres along with Public Works behind Publix over here in South Walton. They have completed their Nellie Drive extension project and will soon be starting construction on that, or they're close to their design and permitting. We've started a constructability, feasibility, conceptual design effort with the performing arts venue, and I'll have that before this council and before the BCC probably in about 2 months. I expect to sit down with the consulting engineering architectural firm next week to go over the draft once again, polish it up a little bit, and then before I'm ready for presentation. The other part of that project is a regional stormwater facility, and it's actually part of this performing arts venue. But when we start talking about a performing arts venue, I set this feasibility, constructability, conceptual design phase study up so that we can understand what does it take. I mean, it's easy to say, hey, let's build a performing arts venue. But that's not a venue that just sits there. I mean, if you do, you're just wasting your money. And we're going to have something like they had over in Okaloosa County for about 6 or 7 years. They called the Conference Center. I think it's caught its own stride now. I don't pay much attention to it, but for a long time it was an albatross, and we don't want that here. Plus, we have diminishing tourist development tax. We have a very large ticket item that's before us that has to be decided on at some point. That's going to suck up, a regional beach access a year. And we call that the PGA tournament. I understand the benefits of it, and I'm not a bed tax collector. I'm not a property owner in South Walton. I'm going to reserve my comment, and that's for y'all to decide. But understand that $6 million or $5 million that won't go to improvements, whatever they may be. Okay, and I hope from this study we understand. What does it mean to have a performing arts venue? This venue is going to be multi-purpose. We're designing it so it has areas, it'll have the main stage and all its ancillary function, concessions, restrooms to support 5,000 to 6,500 people. It has also some paved parking and a lot of what we would call auxiliary parking that would be for the very large shows. It's going to be designed so that it can be small and intimate, or it can be large for the artist that is passing through. It's probably never going to be the venue for the A-list, artist, but the ones that are passing through from New Orleans to Jacksonville. Our different programs we have, the Songwriters Fest, it would be a key place for that. Be a good place for Jennifer to have a home. But it's going to take a lot of money. It's going to take a staff. I mean, I'm not a performing arts venue director. I mean, if you ask me to, I'll figure it out. But Matt needs to hire some people to do that. It needs to be self-sustaining. And it's going to be between, I don't know, 10 and $20 million. And we have some money earmarked for it, but not all of it. We have 4.5 acres down in Miramar Beach that we're talking about building a parking deck on. We're talking about building a parking deck down at Graydon Beach. The plan was let's build a surface lot, because we've been going for so long in a gravel lot that I had gotten very uncomfortable with liability and not in compliance with land development codes and building codes. I said, let me build a surface lot, and I'll turn around and I'll start looking at a parking deck on the back side, as we call it. Those take money. They don't just sit there and operate. I mean, for all practical purposes, the Graydon parking lot should have a building superintendent, a facility superintendent. Tabby Bolins, our manager, has agreed to take on that responsibility along with her transportation responsibilities. And I think it'll fit, it'll work. We'll supplement it with our beach ops people. Got a little off base there, but I always want to iterate. Let's be careful of what we're taking on to make sure that we're not sucking up tourist development tax that will take the place of other things that we need it for, or worse, not have enough to even do it. And then we have a facility that we're not able to keep up, and people look at us funny. A lot of talk. Any questions at this point? Sorry. Yes, ma'am.
No, thank you, I appreciate that. The one thing I wanted to also draw is there's $7 million that the county commissioners are currently negotiating for land purchases at this point, is that correct?
We have a lot of opportunities for land acquisition, and I'm not sure what's totally in the works.
But there's nothing in our budget at this point that would be for those future.
If we were going to purchase any land right now, it would have to come out of reserves. We don't have an account that says land.
And at this point, for this budget, knowing that there's potential purchases being negotiated. I don't remember what county commissioner meeting it was that they were starting to have those conversations, but would it be appropriate to add in money at this point for some of those $7 million land purchases? Because that's currently not in the budget.
If you try to find $7 million or half of that in this year's budget, you're gonna have to do without something else that's in the budget.
No, I understand that, but I know that there's already 7 million that's allocated for future purchases. And so I know that there's nothing in there.
I'm sorry, I don't, where is that allocated?
No, that, isn't the county commissioners there in the middle of
I think
negotiating?
it has been contemplated.
Contemplated, okay.
And for which piece of property?
No, it's for several, right? There was a
There were various
beachfront,
properties that
for
were on
sale.
that were added to the acquisition list.
Okay. And it's always been assumed that that would come out of reserves.
Well, you're correct in that it's not allocated.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So, but we would,
Let me jump in for a second there. We could not spend $7 million out of this year's budget on property acquisition. We are capped by statute at 10% of our total revenue. So the most we could spend out of this year's budget without touching reserves is the total of $5.5 million and change. Now, that being said, we did not have any major acquisitions that were not out of reserves in this past year's budget, correct, Brian?
I think the last acquisition we had was Oyster Lake.
Correct.
And there was, at
And
that
that would-
point, I think you had determined we had expended up what we had in reserves that could be used for that, and we actually, one property we classified a little different.
Not back to that yet, but I'll get there in a
Gotcha.
second. So this past year, we had 60 million. You have 6 million that sits in reserves that could be used. This next year, we bring in 55 million, you can add 5.5 to it. But you could not do it totally out of this year's earned TDT revenue. That being said, we do have the possibility, the Board is not, the Board of County Commissioners, all that is, has not taken the steps to reclassify the parcel that is directly on the Oyster Lake outfall, consistent with the way they've reclassified other outfall parcels as a extension of the, quote, nature center, which our bike path along 30A has been classified as, in light of an Attorney General opinion. Should the board ever choose to do that, that would open up approximately $15 million more that could be used because those funds do not come out of the restricted 10% cap. That being said, it would be my opinion that the board should not include money in the budget, and my position on that is based on the following. The TDC, if it budgets money for acquisition, will then be giving that exact dollar amount, whether it comes from the budgeted funds, assuming they're legally available under the statute, or the combined reserves to the BCC without this council's consideration. Over the past 12 years, we've gone from almost no property acquisition to becoming the primary property acquisition arm of the county about 6 to 8 years ago, to the point where while we have tapered back off, we did have a few acquisitions in 2023 that were larger acquisitions, and then in late 22 as well. Since then, we've tapered off back to doing almost none again in the last year. If the council wishes to have a say on the acquisition of property, the only way you're gonna have that say is to leave the money in reserves and have each project or each specific purchase be brought to you for consideration and vetting. If it's in the budget, you've given the BCC permission to do it, and they will be able to do it without asking your direct permission of, do you prefer this parcel versus that parcel? Do we want something on the bay for this use versus do we want something on the beach for another use? So if the council's desire is to continue to have a seat at the table and at least have some say in what we're buying versus what we're not, which is something this council did not have for a number of years, circa 2017 through about 2020. Then go ahead and put it in the budget. The board will be able to spend it how it sees fit. If you want a seat at the table, don't put it in the budget and make them come to you for budget amendments and draws from reserves.
So I miscommunicated that. I have no intention of putting money or directing or suggesting to put money in for purchases. What my concern is that we are completely underfunded for capital infrastructure. So if purchases are made in the future, knowing that there's money available to purchase, that's not in consideration of ongoing expenses or the build-out for those future projects. That's my concern more so.
Well, let me say this, Melissa, when finance looks at this, we have always taken into consideration if Brian has identified capital expenditures for the build-out, already has that allocated over his 5-year plan, that goes into the total drawdown number. Just because there's money in an account doesn't mean they get to spend it. That's not how we look at it. We look at it as what the total 10% cap applies to, and certainly under this scenario, without it being budgeted, it will come back to this council on a parcel-by-parcel basis should those purchases come forward as part of the county's real property acquisition process.
The other question that I had is in terms of, I know you had mentioned the boardwalks and some of them, you know, that you don't have a full list of all of them that need to be redone, but in terms of the reserve study that I had alluded to earlier, I would love for us to be able to understand when and which properties need continued improvement.
Okay.
And then also, as it relates to if a storm were to come, what's the overall value of all these assets? How do we front load that money so that we can address those and get them back up and running as quickly as possible? And I know that this budget doesn't necessarily address that, but I think it's really something that we need to be focused on.
So in there, we've talked about $20 million as operating costs, rebuild costs in the event of a catastrophe. Obviously, a storm means more rebuilding than a oil spill. Oil spill takes more marketing PR. We've, you know, once again, how do you gauge the storm? Category 1, we got to go in and either move some sand at the foot of the boardwalks or whatever. Category 2, we're building, you know, some steps at the end of the boardwalk, possibly a ramp at the end of a handicap. Category 3, we're probably starting at the top of the dune and rebuilding from the top of the dune down. Anything above that, we got to start talking about the ones that have facilities. Facilities are restrooms, picnic pavilions, parking lots. Then you're getting into a lot more expense. So, you know, what do we have here mostly? Category 1s, category 2s. We think we've got that covered. We get a category 3 in here, we can probably forego some of the other capital improvement projects and move some money around. We also got to then start thinking about reduced TDT, because if we suffer, everybody else suffers. Category 4 or category 5, you know, we're all going to be sitting around saying, oh, hell, what do we do now? We'll get back in gear and do what we can. Will be some hard decisions on how much money do we spend on marketing and PR, and how much money do we spend on rebuilding public facilities, and to what degree. Back to your first question, of the boardwalks that did not get rebuilt, we have about 16 neighborhood beach accesses and 2 regional beach accesses. And on those rebuilds, it's what I was calling a facelift. So what we were doing is rebuilding the boardwalks, the actual deck boards and the handrails and structure as required. Some of those did require, when I say structure, I'm talking about pilings and girders and joists. The other thing I was attempting to do was to standardize all the construction. The model that I came up with back in 2018 makes for a easy rebuild if you have to do a rebuild, recognizing the pilings will stay in place. It's easy to come back in and put this superstructure on top of it. But so that's what we have left to do. And the ones that we had put into this second group were ones that had more time in their service life than the ones that we rebuilt. Hurricane Dennis, there was a lot of rebuilding after Hurricane Dennis. And there was, I guess it was, I can't remember the name of it, but there were some storms after that, not very big, but they caused some issues down, at the foot of the boardwalks. Anyway, I took the worst ones we had, I've rebuilt those, the next ones in lines. When I say we're keeping them together, I don't mean that as in they're, need to be condemned. They just take more effort and more material as that material starts to age more. We need to rebuild them because we want to have the best product we can have. We always think in our arena is we got to have the best, newest, presentation for the visitors that pay a bunch of money that come here. That's why we like new trucks. They can look good, clean them every day and all that. We want our boardwalks looking best. Our buildings keep, painted annually. When I say painted, doors, trim, the stuff that gets to wear. We're on like a 8 to 10 year rotation on painting the whole facilities and all that. So I've got a good program that keeps our stuff in good shape and keeps the facilities where they need to be. And to continue with that, we just need to pay attention to where our TDT is going. Some of it's insured, some of it's self-insured.
And would there be a suggestion then if we could provide additional funds there to help with that? I know that we're staying pretty flat compared to last year, but
Yeah.
when our last meeting, we talked about we're handling things for now, but for a proactive future approach, where could we help put some of that money into what category to make those things?
So as we increase facilities and increase our needs for annual operations and maintenance, we do that through personnel and the stuff we use to do that. And so I would expect the accounts of operating supplies, personnel to grow. And so where I'm right now at $11 million annually, if you'll notice that there's $800,000 in machinery and equipment, there's $200,000 in infrastructure, that's small repairs to multi-use path, and I think there's probably one small repair to an RBA in there. And then if you look up above that, it's all operating costs. I would expect that, over the next 5 years, that you would see this account, the 41010 account, to start approaching 15 million. And that's where I've joked with Matt is, hey, you're going to run out of marketing money. Me and Matt and Kelly and Nicole and Karen all share the first 2 pennies. And at some point, when you build stuff, you have to maintain it or you have to forego it or reduce your service level. And those are the decisions that will have to be made. I applaud Matt and Kelly and Karen and Nicole for what they do. It's an important function. But y'all have built, or we have built all this stuff, and the people that come here expect it to be in good service. And so we got to figure it out. So where should we do it? Over the last 11 years that I've been here, I've been very fortunate to build into our annual budgets the ability to do that. And I think we demonstrated, if you go out into our arena, you'll see that we do a good job of spending the TDT. Has there been some years where we have unspent budget? There has been. It's usually in the form of capital improvement projects because I got a certain bandwidth. I would like to think that I can do more than 4 projects a year, but the reality is I probably can't. We're teeing up 3 more right now. And I got 3 more I'm fixing to start design and permitting on. So the answer to your question is yes. If you allow me to, I will continue to build it into my annual budget. We ought to really look at the high impact penny because it's now being used for items that we did not anticipate it being used for. That's all the decision-making responsibilities of this council and the Board of County Commissioners. But I think I've made it clear that we ought to think about, as we build all this public facilities. We also got to accompany it with annual operations and maintenance. Right now, we feel that we're okay for a Cat 2, possibly a Cat 3. But we got to think about it in the future. You know, I mean, like the boardwalks that I built or the regional beach accesses I built 6 years ago, they're not considered new facilities anymore. And they get use 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. And multi-use path, I mean, let's face it, we got to rebuild the whole thing. I mean, it needs it. I mean, it's a huge draw to our community. When I go out of destination, meet people at different conferences, first thing, man, I love y'all's multi-use path. How'd y'all build that? And I say, man, we just cast some asphalt on the ground and call it good. And it's truly what we did a long time ago. As we've rebuilt it, I rebuilt it to what we call greenway standards, 10 feet wide, appropriate base. We don't do everything per greenway standards because the input we had years ago in a destination improvement study gave us some ideas of what people like here and what they don't like. And we try to, try to stay with that. But so we have some big expenditures, I think, coming up, and we ought to pay very, very close attention to tourist development tax expenditures in the forms of capital improvements and operations and maintenance. Hate to be the doom and gloom guy up here, but anyway,
Chair,
I know y'all got some more questions.
Vice Chair, you're recognized.
So Brian, what I'm hearing you say, and just making sure we're all clear, you feel like you have what you need in the budget presented for next year, but we are going to have to start looking at the future years. Is that, that perfect? I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
So we're good.
Like I said, yeah, previous councils have heard what I've asked for and have confidence in my presentations and my asks and have resourced me very well. Board of County Commissioners, the ultimate authority or approval, have resourced me very well. Few deficiencies in some areas, but we'll get around those. But overall, if I said that we need it, it's been understood and allowed to be included in a budget. And we're, like I say, we're good for next year. In the 2027 budget, you'll probably see a higher number.
As we would expect.
And like I say, there's just, some of those larger projects, some of the larger infrastructure projects, like I say, multi-use path, it has to be looked at wholesale with road right-of-way rebuilding. 30A, little or no stormwater facilities. As we build the projects that we build, I attempt to correct stormwater deficiencies local to that beach access. So let's take Headland Avenue, for example. We had a big problem with stormwater at the corner of Montgomery and Headland, where it blew out that dune 3 times in the last 6 years. So we now have built a new beach access boardwalk, but we also put in a stormwater system that collects more off-site stormwater than on-site. And so I think that's a good public service. That area is high rental. It easily was justified as a TDT expenditure, and we've solved that problem in that corner, and we've built a new beach access. But as we go down 30A, we build new bike path. I work very close with Chance Powell and Charlie Cotton, the 2 engineers for the county, to make sure that our work is coincidental and not, duplicative, and that we're doing it at the same time to reduce the impact to the community. And tell you what, man, you shut down a road around here, everybody comes unglued. Got to have a new bridge, but don't do it right now until we get to the point where we are right now. Sorry. Y'all done got me amped up.
Was there a question or comment from the audience? Ms. Harris, you had a,
Okay. We've got to be sure we have the money for everything Brian needs, because if we don't, tourists aren't coming. Now, all of y'all know that, because we're bed tax collectors, or our bed tax money helps Jennifer and other people with their things. We got to have help for the north, too, if the hurricane hits here. We're not going to have a choice. if the north is torn up as it goes through here, somebody's gonna have to help them too. And I don't know that the BCC has the money. But you said the tram vehicles that we really need, I usually don't ask the question if I don't know the answer, Brian. Won't be here till September. Well, September is after tourist season. Can you tell me when they were first asked for, requested?
I believe the purchase requisition was entered in the first week in March.
Is that standard for us to not get them till September? Did we ask for them before March?
So we put them in last year's budget, and I put in the purchase rec. There were some questions about it. We met with people above me that approve things, and
So they were put in last year's budget, and they didn't get approved to this March. And if you don't order them until this March, you're not gonna have them for summer.
well, so the purchase rec, the process is purchase requisition, that then goes through the approval processes and turns into a purchase order and goes to the vendor. We identified buses that are appropriate for our program, put them in, the purchase rec in. There was some questions about the program, the particular vehicles. We met with the approval people above us and answered the questions, and I've kept in touch to make sure that they're moving forward. The purchase order has not been generated yet, and they're about 10 weeks out, 10 to 12 weeks out, and there's a little bit of time to accessorize them to make them a South Walton bus. They
The
come ready to go.
The purchase order has still not been completed.
As of last week, the purchase order did not.
And you
been
put in for
issued.
it last year, and it hadn't been completed as of today, and we're in summer right now, we're in June.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Public records requested a lot, so that's why I know the answer. Are we still paying two mechanics, one which is in the north, and we only have one mechanic down here to work on all our trucks, but our TDC money is still paying a mechanic north of the bay, full-time?
No, we're not
Good.
paying for a mechanic north of the bay, so.
We're paying for two mechanics?
So we have, in the FTE count for this year and last year, there is two mechanics for
Right.
Beach Operations Department.
Where
we
are they
have-
located?
What we call shop floor mechanic, head mechanic, works in my office and takes care of our equipment.
Okay,
The second mechanic has not been hired.
we don't have one?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Mechanics are actually under fleet maintenance,
Okay,
management, but they work exclusively for me.
okay. The trucks that are rusted out underneath and that are in bad shape, how many trucks do we need?
So the truck order for 2025 has been completed, and we're awaiting delivery of the trucks.
Okay. We don't need any more when those come.
No, ma'am, like I say, we have a good program of
Okay,
rotating trucks
that's
in
all I
and
want to
out.
know. And do you have an assistant hired?
Yes, ma'am, an offer was made to a candidate that was interviewed, and he accepted that offer on Thursday, and he is expected to start on June 30th.
And your first candidate turned it down because we didn't offer enough, correct?
The first qualified candidate, we could not come to terms and conditions on compensation, and he politely backed out, and then we made an offer to the second candidate, and he accepted the.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
You did a great job.
Well, I appreciate it.
Brian, I just wanted to say real fast, I think on behalf of all of us, thank you for the amount of thought and consideration that you put into not just your budget, current year, upcoming year, but for the future of your team, for the future of the county, and for contingencies, right, from the event of contingencies. And just appreciate the amount of thought you put into that.
Yeah, that's what y'all paid me to do.
Is there any, Mr. Bagby?
Thank you, Commissioner. And Councilmember Edwards, I want to really thank you for, and all of you, for thinking strategically about this. This is the first step of developing a plan to refresh our destination. So if we do the reserve study, and Matt's right, some of it is insurable, some of it's not insurable. Walkovers are not insurable, so, and you'll have to go through that. Some of it's self-insured. So you'll have to, when you do the reserve study, what is it actually gonna cost to rebuild the destination? The other thing you need to look at in that study is, Brian's gotten up here the last 30, 45 minutes and told you, nope, we need to replace the whole bike path. Nope, we need to replace, half of our walkovers. Nope, we need to, and all we've done for the last 5, 6, 7 years is just put Band-Aids on this, and it looks like it. Okay, I mean, we have bathrooms where pieces need to be replaced, not just repainting the doors every year, but actually getting in there, replacing the tile, upgrading them, because they look like, a 1950 cinder block bathroom, because they are a 1960 cinder block bathroom. And so once you get this programmed renewal and replacement fund, and all of you do it in your businesses or in your communities, where 10 years we're going to have to replace the roof on the city hall, and 15 years we're going to have to replace something on the police station, or whatever, you program for it, because we can't keep eating the operating budget to pay for those things which we should be programming for. And we're not programming for them, and we haven't for a while, and every one of you up there is shaking your head because you know that's the truth. So I applaud you for bringing this up and saying, look, we got to get a plan here. We don't have a plan. We don't have a plan if we get wiped out. We don't even have a sustainment plan that carries us through for the next 5, 7 years. And if we, have 18 miles of bike path and they last 10 years before we have to redo the asphalt, we ought to be replacing 1/10 of it every year. And we're not. We're just out there patching. So I would just ask you, y'all know what y'all need to do. You're on the right track. Just continue to do it. And yeah, we're not going to fix it this year, but hopefully when we're here a year from now, okay, we'll have a plan, and here's our renewal and replacement fund, and here's what we're going to replace in this year. And it's not, well, what breaks is what we're going to fix this year. Thank you.
Is there anything else from the board?
For the record, they're not 1950s, they're 1980s. I mean, that'd be mid-century modern. We might want to keep that. I stand corrected. Legion Park still has some of the FDOT Wayside Park butterfly roof structures, which we're going to hang on to.
Is there somewhere where we're deficient in not giving you enough to make those necessary modifications on an ongoing basis?
No. Like I say, we have it covered. Mr. Bagby's correct. There may be a few things where we could replace mirrors with something a little more modern. I try to, as we move along, to replace fixtures, interior finishes, and stuff like that with items that don't take much maintenance. Some of our older facilities still have the old terracotta clay tile in them. I hate to say it, Ed Walton has a trench floor drain that, is not the best thing to have. But, Ed Walton will be a new building in the next 5 years. We replaced the picnic pavilions, I think it was 6 years ago. A few of our facilities, the older ones could, stand a new building. Blue Mountain Beach, I'd like to replace it because it's a single fixture bathroom, single fixture per gender, and that means you have to have a lockable door, and I just don't like lockable doors at public facility bathrooms. Somebody could go in there and lock the door, do nefarious stuff.
But you have what you need to do that?
In the future, we'll bring it up in budgets. Right now, let's say we laid out a 5-year capital improvement plan. Most of it is new construction. Some of it was renovation of existing. I do not have Blue Mountain Beach or Ed Walton's bathroom buildings in a budget right now. But as we move through the years, we will have it. The basic thing I wanted to make sure is that we add on facilities, we make sure that we understand there's operations and maintenance costs that goes with it. and my budget should be expected to go up. If TDT is going down, we gotta start looking, where did we do that? It's the old, what don't you want story. We're gonna get there.
Mr. Sconiers, you have a question or comment?
I was just echoing Mr. Chair, but I think that Mr. Kellenberger was alluding to it. It's the recognizing that these capital improvement projects have to continue on and that they're baked into a plan. Your 5 to 10 year SIP plan, like you were saying, and working with Melissa and Devin and staff and then this board moving forward during those budget times to ensure that we're covering all of these. And that's a living document, so it's something that continuously changes over
It is.
time. It's not really, hey, I only built that in the first time, but now there's a need to have these other facilities. How do I get it there? I think you're already doing that. It's
I am.
in adding those to that, so.
Yeah, each time y'all buy some property, sometimes that project leapfrogs. So
Yes, sir.
Oyster Lake, leapfrogged over a couple other ones. 'cause-
And I echo your concerns on ongoing maintenance. That's huge. I mean, we have to keep the appearance and the usability of all these different, the equipment, and facilities, and services that we provide, so.
Yeah, Mr. Bagby's right, in our church, we have reserved funds for, plant and facilities, anticipating new air conditionings or new roof or paint or whatever. And like I say, we do that in a ongoing way of replacement, be it trucks, boardwalks, buildings or whatever. Just over the last 6 years, we bought a lot of property and we're developing that property.
And if I can chime in for a second, I do want to make sure that the council at least is aware that when we look at these large reserve numbers, while all of our pennies are broadly able to be used by ordinance for every allowable purpose under 125-0104, and even though we classify them admin, shoulder season, beach or nourishment, et cetera, high tourism impact, those are titles we have assigned without actual strings attached at an ordinance level and certainly not at a state statute level, with one notable exception. The monies you've allocated for beach or nourishment or beach restoration, by statute, any funds we identify as a local matching source for beach or nourishment, restoration, or even erosion control that is in the long-range budget plan of the state's beach management plan, or that had been obligated to a financial plan for a federally authorized program, what we're dealing with typically everything we do this with, cannot by statute, not ordinance, not your vote, not the board's vote, by statute, they cannot be used or loaned for any other purpose. And now, we're not doing that. I want to be very clear. But there is often, I think, a concern of, well, we've got all this money sitting here, maybe we can borrow against it, or maybe we can take it to do it for this. Once that money's allocated out for these projects, that takes a large number of your reserve money out of the window. The other thing I would say is, as we talk about beach park facilities, which is the biggest thing Brian's talking about, we have to look at that 10% cap. As long as we're under 100,000 population, we have that 10% cap. Now, we haven't had this conversation here, probably, Jim will smack me if I completely misstate this, but since I think he was our executive director, and at the time, government interest rates were not something that were, for public finance, very favorable. They probably got a lot more favorable in the 8 or so years after that, and have now swung back a little bit. But understand, we will always have this cap on beach park facilities. So what happens if we get into restoring after a storm? Well, at some point, we're going to have some limitation. And if you're paying all of your new projects out of your new revenue, and you don't have any money set aside for maintenance or catastrophe remediation, it's going to be a problem. At some point, as Brian gives you these 5-year plans, it is probably a conversation, not to say you do or do not pledge money for debt service, but to evaluate, is that a better use of that revenue? And have your financial team work with the financial advisors to get you an actual analysis. Because right now, I mean, we haven't looked at this. The last time this conversation even came up was well over 12 years ago, Jim, that sound about right? So we've had a pile of money coming in, and we've basically just spent it as it comes in. So we're spending present dollars for present cost and not leveraging our money to our advantage. And when we were at 24 million annual revenue, that was a conversation. When we got to 40 million, 50 million, it became less of a concern. But if we're looking at falling revenues, these are things you have to be considerate about. I just want to point out, Brian is giving you the future expense he needs to do new building. But ultimately, he's going to end up having to pull it out of that money he set aside to replace that terracotta, because there's not more money coming in. We have a finite amount of money that will come in. It's not going to be year-over-year growth. So I point that out to you is, if this board says they want to do it right now today, you can't just go to a bank and borrow the money. That's not how public finance works. It is a process. And so it doesn't have to be built into this year's budget, but it's something that as we go into strategic planning, it's not something I've heard this council talk about, and Brian is bringing these projects up to you, but his budget is going to continue to increase, and our revenue, as he just said, does not appear to be in that same path. So something we need to consider over the next year, especially in light of that large reserve amount. The more money that's pledged there for beach nourishment, the more it takes out of our overall revenue, and we're still stuck at a 10% cap on doing anything on beach park facilities. So we have two statutory factors that really compress what Brian gets to do. He's gonna do what he can, and he has for the past several years, but I just want the council to be thinking about that, because it is a much more intensive process than perhaps in your private business going and drawing on a line of credit.
Anything else? Seeing none? Okay, so I guess we're in a posture where we formally approve the recommended budget. Is that where we're at, Clay?
Unless there are any other questions, yes, sir.
The chair would entertain a motion. Is that where we're at?
Unless there's any other presentations on any other parts of the budget and questions, yes, sir.
I just wanted to, I know we keep, this is a little bit off topic, but I think it's a common theme for what we've talked about both today and last Wednesday. I'd like for us to take a minute and talk a little bit more about the reserve study, future of the reserves, vision for the reserves. I was kind of surprised to find out last week that there really wasn't a vision for the reserves, because we continue to talk about not just this budget, but for the future of the county. I think that's a critical thing. I mean, as Clay mentioned, we've kind of treated the reserves like a cookie jar, right? You know, and hey, there's $52 million in there, and that's great. And I think we look at it like that's an unlimited source of funds. And as, you know, the market has improved over the last several years, maybe it has been, but we're in an environment where that's not going to continue. And, you know, I know we talk a lot about storm contingency and those kind of things, but for me, it's not even just limited to that. I mean, if we've got to think about growth, if we've got to think about acquisition, we got to think about, you know, maintaining these facilities that we're investing in. This is, I think the reserves is a very, very critical foundation for what this budget looks like going forward. And I know that we're not going to be able to do anything to affect this upcoming fiscal year, but I'd like for us to at least think about, what does this study look like? What does the vision look like, right? How do we make sure that's in alignment? You know, I think Jim made, he had a very, very good comment the other day, and I'm paraphrasing. Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said our budget, the foundation of our budget should be in alignment with the vision of the county. And I don't know that we've put a lot of thought or energy into that, quite honestly. And I think in order to do that, I think the foundation of that is the reserves. Matt, what does a reserve study look like? What does that process look like? What should we expect?
Mr. Algren, you're recognized.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, Brian, I think it's exactly what Clay kind of alluded to is, you know, working with our agency partners and working with ONB Finance and county staff to, you know, identify some solid numbers of what do we actually need to tuck away, whether that's for beach restoration, whether that's for continual operations, or as we go through this strategic planning process to decide you know, what is the vision, what is the image we want to be as a county moving forward, and how do we put those dollars in those buckets of what we want to be and identify as we move forward.
Sounds good.
Yes, sir.
Is
Oh, yes, sir.
there a group or a firm in mind that would do that? Is that something that we do internally? Is that
Yeah, I think we have to explore those
timeline costs,
options.
all
and-
those kind of things?
Yeah, I think we have to explore those options and see what's available to us.
Okay. That's what
Right,
I'm
yeah.
wondering. I mean, we've got that coming up.
Yeah, I think it
but
has
is
to be part of
something
that process. I agree 100%.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Oh, yes, sir.
I just wanted to thank the budget team for making, and Matt for meeting and making the changes based on our discussion from the last meeting. Thank you so much. I appreciate moving some of that money from the contingencies as we, have identified that Brian needed. I did want to ask about the salaries and wages. I realized that y'all put people back almost into, I believe, their departments and broke it down. But there was an increase from the tentative to the TDC workshop. Is that specifically for the potential executive director position, and then all the additional FTEs stay in place, that considering the sustainability individual that we talked about as an add-on?
Yes, ma'am, you're correct,
Okay.
100% correct.
And that would continue to keep that sustainability individual, or would just be an FTE position?
It would be an FTE position identified for that unless you all have other guidance, and we're happy to go whatever direction you all see fit. Yes, ma'am.
I know the county has someone for that sustainability position, so I'd like to keep an FTE, but I don't know if we necessarily, or if the council would prefer to earmark it for something else based on a position needed, but I just don't want to duplicate. And then the other thing that I want to draw attention to, and I know I've mentioned this, but before the budget goes to the Board of County Commissioners, I'd really like to see some of the duplication within the code compliance and the sheriff's department. I know that we're over that 10% right now, the 10 million in total. And so I'd like to see some reductions there. I know we're not going to see it today, but I'd like to see that as a part of the budget.
Yeah, and actually, Tiffany, I just want to echo, that's at the top of my list. Obviously, it has nothing to do with the lifeguard program, fully support that, but some of these new things that we're funding, I really question whether or not that makes sense for TDT dollars, especially in light of discussions today, all the upcoming maintenance that we know will be needed for these new facilities. That is where I have, the reserves was number 2 for me, but that is where most of my questions and concerns are.
Let me chime in just 1 second. With regard to lifeguards, our lifeguard program predates the statutory amendment. Our lifeguard program, when it was originally done and discussed, was adopted under express legislative findings. It would be done as a service and amenity offered that would be promoting the destination in the light of a number of unfortunate circumstances that occurred in the early 2000s. So we've looked at this, we've talked to DOR, Melissa and I have looked at it. The lifeguard number, the $3.25 million, does not apply against that 10% cap based on the board's original resolution that found it. In fact, other counties at that time were not legally able to implement lifeguard services, whereas we were determined that we had properly enacted it under a separate caveat. That being said, I do think the way we have done this, we do have to be mindful of the beach code, whereas it may not have previously been lumped under that 10% for safety. I do want to call it out. I think it does now. And it should be treated as a reimbursement the same way it is for anybody else, even though it is a county agency. So that is something we do need to be very mindful of. But I want to be clear, we are not over the 10% cap unless you count lifeguards, but the lifeguards do not fall subject to it. Now, I also want to note, if we change the way we do our lifeguard program, we change the way we market it, we get outside the original ambit of what the BCC approved 20-plus years ago, yes, we're gonna now fall into that statute. So that's why we've been very careful how we've administered the lifeguard program to not bring it subject to that.
Mr. LaCasse, you recognize.
I'd just like to say, we're talking about expenses heavily here and what we can do, as you know, and as everybody's talked about. Talking about increasing in the expenses for the growth that we have for the facilities and where we're going and what we want to do for the community, which is all great. What we haven't touched on before this budget goes up, I'd like to talk about the revenue stream. We see this decline, and anybody around here that collects bed tax knows you can fight a percentage right out of business. We'll fight ourselves right out of what we're trying to accomplish by creating a top destination. We need to look at the revenue stream, how the money is spent to gain that revenue stream and grow it, and not just consider one option. Having one sole purpose of a destination to create a memorable experience and increase in bed tax isn't necessarily the only plight there. We need to look at increasing our revenue instead of a decline. You know, as we look at, was it off close, 8.7%? Anybody here around this table or in the audience that has their business looks at a decline like that, and the first thing you're doing is looking at how you can increase your revenue. You know, so before the budget goes forward, it'd be great to have a workshop or something to talk about the revenue stream, what we can do about it, and how the budget can impact that.
Claire, are we restricted on time?
No, I mean, you spend as much time as you want talking about this today.
But I
We're
mean,
hearing-
I'm sorry, we do, do we have to formally approve something today, or is there another additional opportunity in the near future that we can do this?
If the board's not in a position where it is ready or it cannot come to consensus, my recommendation will be to make a motion to schedule a special meeting for the sole purpose of finalizing the budget and to do it, like I said, within the next 3 weeks. The sooner the better.
Would that require a special meeting?
Yes, sir. We can't wait till August, I can say that much. And we have no other meetings scheduled. We have workshops, but you can't vote at those.
What's the desire of the board? I guess there is no desire.
Stand by. I mean, I think you make a great point. Marketing staying flat, I said it at the last meeting, when inventory has grown considerably, is something that probably does need to be looked at. I also made a note, I think a PR campaign with Brian and all this great work and the trams, and that it really is, you know, it's interesting. I have 2 young ladies staying at my house that drive down to Baycott County to go to the beach. They're interns, and their response to me is like, well, it's just too much of a hassle. And I'm like, go to Grayton, park in the lot, jump on the shuttle. I promise you it's not. But there's got to be a huge PR campaign, especially when every time you jump on social media and it's Hey 30A or whatever it is, somebody's on there talking about beach access and how hard it is to get to the beach. So with all of that being said, I think this is one of the more important things that we're going to do this year. I'm very glad. I mean, it would have been nice if the strategic planning process could have come before the budget, but we all know it could not and did not. But I do think it's important that we take this very seriously and that we give one more run at discussing the budget. So I will make a motion to call a special meeting between now and June. What are you thinking?
Just say end of the month.
Between now and the end of the month for, to finalize and approve of the budget to send it forward to the BCC.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Show the motion carries. So we will let that rest for up to, what, 2.5 weeks? All right, let's move down to item number 4. Mr. Algren, you have some direction regarding updates to the TDT ordinance.
Yes, sir, thank you, and I'll probably tag team this with Mr. Atkinson. Just wanted to put this in front of you all to look at and see if you all had any general, discussions, comments on this. The TDT ordinance is something we haven't looked at in a couple years now, and, this is essentially the document that has the buckets that we kind of dictate, our priorities with when it comes to planning. When we did this back in 2023, we had shifted from doing it as dollar figure ranges to shifting it to percentage ranges, understanding that gave us a little bit more flexibility. So my intent today was just to provide you all with that document and open the floor for discussion on whether you all felt there was a need to kind of adjust these ranges or make any recommendations there, understanding that we're kind of going through the budget process and will ultimately be going through strategic planning as well.
Mr. Sconiers, you're recognized. Oh, you're not Miss Edwards. I got you. Go ahead, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt. I had asked to put this on the budget, I had asked to put this on the agenda after meeting with the budget team. And so I would like for us, and I've talked to Clay about this as well, not necessarily focused on the percentages, but this amendment has not been, the last time it was updated was 2023, and prior to that, I believe, was 2013. What I'd like to see, in speaking to the budget team, is actually have a little bit more clarity on some of these buckets and some specificity as it relates to what these buckets are. So high impact, what exactly does that mean? Lining some of that out. What I like to see before the next meeting is for Clay and the budget team to kind of come together and make some suggestions of what the ordinance should look like. And we go from there.
And I did speak to Councilmember Edwards about this. When Mr. Cutshaw moved us to this type of approach initially, and then we converted it to percentages after that, we looked at a lot of different ordinances around the state. One of the things you'll see in ordinance plans, while what we have done is basically mirror the representative penny buckets that you see in your budget, most other counties end up anywhere from 6 to 12 categories that they list, and it is nowhere near as broad. I think you're always going to see a beach renourishment category, but beach management or beach facilities are usually something entirely separate. So just to give you one example of how you can break something out, certainly the top line at 50% would be further broken out. So you could do that with what you have here, but I think it is beneficial. One of the things we see a lot of other places do is talk about marketing or advertising as a specific situation. And then some places get into granularity of marketing versus promotion to show the two different types of things. There are a variety of ways we can do it. I can bring back a number of examples. I never would encourage you to get as granular as your budget, because that means requiring you have to update the ordinance every time we want to do it. But if you want more specificity here, it should be very easy to bring back something that shows you more buckets that we spread the percentages across, so it's more clear what we have to work within. Because right now, having half your budget in one line item is not what you would see elsewhere. So we can gladly do that. I also note I did talk to Councilmember Edwards. I apologize for any confusion my absence at the budget workshop had in the 15 years I've done this. I don't recall ever attending a budget workshop for the TDC. It's typically not something I do. I attend meetings, not workshops. I understand that, and I've spoken to several other members of the council, I understand it's your desire you would like to see me at those. I'll gladly work with staff to make sure that happens moving forward in the future. With all my governmental clients, it's at request. If you want me there for budget workshops, some don't have a need or see a need to have me there, and I'm okay with that. I certainly have plenty of other things I'll gladly do, but if you need me there or want me there, I'll be glad to. So apologize for any confusion that came up with that. We've added a lot of workshops, and while I did for years attend strategic planning, sometimes I didn't either. It just depended on the nature of the meeting. So, but I'll certainly work with staff on that. So thank you.
Is there any other discussion or questions regarding the TDT ordinance? Is there anything that we need to do?
No, sir, not right now. We'll bring back something and we'll work on getting an updated ordinance together after y'all take a look at it and present it to the BCC.
All right, let's move to item number 5, PGA Tour update. Mr. Algren, you're recognized.
All right. Hello again. Yeah, just wanted to offer the update and continue the dialogue regarding the PGA. I know this is something we all keep continuing to talk about and something that's important to all of us on our radars to have those ongoing discussions. So after the BCC meeting, or during the BCC meeting, I should say, there was talks about, putting forth perhaps Commissioner Drake and, Mr. Atkinson together to, sit down and negotiate and see if we can find a direction to move forward if that was ultimately the will of the council. Since last week, Alan Fish, who is with the PGA Tour, he sent an email to all of the county commissioners, which I ultimately forwarded to all of you as well, so you could kind of see, their stance, their point of kind of where they're looking at right now. And in having those conversations with them, what they confirmed to me as late as yesterday was, when they're looking at the proposal that you all have to consider, the only term that's really negotiable from them is the number of years. So I don't know if that is something that ultimately, will change any minds, change any direction, or, garner any additional discussion. But I think that was the big point that I kind of wanted to open up to the group here is what they shared with me, like I said, yesterday. Because I think there's more conversation.
Mr. Chair, in watching the BCC meeting and then thinking about our discussions here, have any of the other stakeholders come to the table to offer in partnerships with the county on this matter at all? Sandestin or anything?
No, sir.
Any additional questions or comments? Mr. Moffett?
Matt, last week at the first half of the budget meeting last Wednesday, you indicated that you didn't see a way to fund the PGA event without dipping into the reserves. Is that still the case? There's no way to fund this out of ongoing operations?
Yeah, I mean, I think working with Summer and Devin, we really have not been able to identify a place without, not doing something else or another program or another, something to do this, right? I think that's really just kind of where we find ourselves right now, to be honest.
My personal 2 cents, my personal feelings on the matter is, regardless of our feelings of the opportunity, I don't know that we can responsibly justify funding the event or afford the event if we've got to dip into reserves. I mean, just in light of this conversation that we just had, right, without some kind of strategic vision for the reserves and how critical the reserves are going to be for the future of our county, I don't see how we can afford it. It's just my personal 2 cents, not responsibly anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's the decision ultimately that you all, have to kind of make is, whether this is something that, we do, and if we do it, how do we fund that, right? I think that's the $1 million question.
Chair.
Yes, ma'am, you recognize.
So at our budget workshop, we talked about having another motion to adjust who could be that negotiating person. I don't know if that email negates that, the need to negotiate, but is that something that we still want to talk about?
Sure.
When I looked at the email, I think what my biggest takeaway was they don't even go into negotiations until you agree to the terms. Now, one of the things we discussed, I think, at the last workshop was, would they go out and aggressively help you find a sponsor? In writing, he said yes. Having said that, they usually don't come on board year one. Unfortunately, as this dialogue has continued, do you want to touch, Matt, just briefly on also the email that you sent us from the
Yeah.
strategic planning? Because I read that entire thing too, and it certainly did not seem to me that they felt like.
Yeah, so in conversations that, we had with various stakeholders in the community, with JLL, our strategic planning consultants, they had shared their opinion that, doing a tournament is really not in their opinion, the best use of those dollars. I think really to paraphrase what they were saying is you could use those dollars in a more meaningful way for destination development type initiatives, things that will build and drive the destination forward, really was kind of the long and short of what they had said.
Anyone else?
To Mr. Bagby's point, actually, well, I'm excited to hear what, what you have to say as well. But to Mr. Bagby's point, last week, same thing that we just touched on a minute ago. I think we need to make sure that this event is in alignment with the county's vision. And I think diving into something like this without knowing what that is or without having that discussion, like I said, I think it's very, the feedback that we're getting from JLL, I think Zender's, initial feedback was similar. I just, without us being able to truly walk into this and say, hey, we've got a long-term plan for it and it's in alignment with what we want to do here, I think it's a mistake. It's just a personal take on it.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Yeah, try to find solutions. I know there are people on both sides of this fence. We had the conversation. Don't want to couch it that you can spend $6 million improving this destination and helping Brian out, or you can fund a golf tournament. I would say there's more questions still today, and we've talked about this at 8 meetings between y'all and the BCC. There's more questions today that still haven't been answered than there are answers. What happens when the tournament they give you, it competes with a Ryder Cup or a President's Cup or a Solheim Cup or whatever, which all occur in the fall. We've already talked about the SEC schedule and things like that. I think if you want to go forward, I would say, it shouldn't be on you or the bed tax collector community to fund the whole thing. If you want to say, look, we'll take $1 million a year out of the shoulder season or new product money reserves for 4 years, and we'll be a participant, we'll help because it will help us in some, then that might be an out. That might be a solution. But to say, yes, we're going to sign up for the entire thing as the county or as the TDC and the BCC, that's probably just a bridge too far. I could get up here and go for 15 minutes on just questions that, well, what about this? What about that? What about this other thing? Where's all this going to happen? If St. Joe or Sandestin or somebody wants to step up and, do $3 million and y'all want to do $1 million, and then you find the PGA helps find $2 million of other sponsors, you might pull it together. We have a history with golf tournaments in this destination. It's not great, okay? So, thanks. But I trust that y'all and the BCC will do the right thing for the future of the destination in your decision. Thank you.
I want to chime in on one point on the email that you all saw. In the email, they discussed beginning the contract process and made the statement, however, until we have agreed on commercial terms, parentheses, years investment in assets via the proposal which they attached, we will not begin the contract process. I'm going to give the council my position, and it's the same I'll give to the BCC. The proposal they presented you directly contradicts that. So I am specifically advising you, as I will advise the BCC, that if there is a desire to move forward with this, that we do not officially accept that proposal to start that process. And I would call everybody's attention to page 4 of that proposal, whether you have it in front of you or not. I'll read the pertinent part. Legal disclaimer. This proposal is presented for the purposes of discussion, period. There are numerous details, parentheses, i.e. golf course site fee, tournament operator, comma, et cetera, close parentheses, that could impact the financials of this proposal. Should the PGA Tour and Walton County Tourism enter negotiations, the contents of this proposal may be subject to change. I cannot in good conscience tell any client, vote to enter into a proposal because they say you have to enter into the proposal before you negotiate, when the proposal itself says it's subject to change in negotiation. You don't have anything you can accept at this point in time. Now, I'm hearing a lot that says we're nowhere close to being able to enter into negotiation. If it is the desire and the will of this board for me or anyone else from staff to negotiate, we will gladly carry out our duty, but I'll simply say this. I have yet to hear, and I did go back and listen to our meeting last Wednesday to make sure I was aware of what this was. I've yet to hear that we have anything close to sufficient to enter into actual negotiations, because there are too many questions unanswered about how this would impact our community. And if I were advising any of you up there in your private businesses, we would have a different conversation, but we're dealing with public tax dollars. We simply cannot go into it blind. And my problem is I can't sit there and assure that the money we're gonna commit to spend would legally be appropriate to spend if we don't know what it's being used for. And my concern when I read this proposal is it appears this money is going to more than just a media buy, which is acceptable use, but that's not all it is. So there's a lot of issues we would have to cross before we do. And ultimately, I'd say this, if the board wishes to do it, you need to include it in the tourism plan. If you don't wish to do it, you need to make it clear it is not going to be part of your tourism plan. And if it's not, it does not happen. And that's where you are.
Clay, it was, at the workshop, it was suggested that someone from the board, and I was asked to do this, sit down with you and the PGA team and discuss, what it looks like going forward. Is that something that you and I could do?
If that's what this board wants, if they say that it's something they're gonna include in their plan to move forward, absolutely. But I think at this point in time, based on what we're seeing, we can't agree to the proposal, so I'm saying the furthest we can go, include it in the plan, because it's not in your tourism plan right now. And if you include in the plan, then Matt and the team's gonna have to get with finance to work through those numbers. You and I are gonna sit down, now that we know it's included in the plan without being fully funded, to start negotiations. But short of that, if this council doesn't include it in the plan, it can't even be pursued legally under the statute. So we need this council to make that decision, yes or no. But yes, Mr. Chair, I'm more than willing to do that at any time you ask.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes. I believe this golf tournament needs to be in the hands of private enterprise, not a government entity, period. That's how I feel. I don't think that's what we should be doing. Let private enterprise, if they take the lead, they commit to the PGA, then allow that entity come back to the Tourist Development Council for possibly a grant, or do we want to participate? Would we like to put something in it so that we could use it for some sort of a tourism marketing benefit? But I'd like to bring it personally to a conclusion that this needs to be left up to private enterprise, period.
Clay, what needs to be done to satisfy any legal requirements to sit down and actually talk about numbers? Are you saying that we have to formally adopt that in?
I would ask that it be a motion to include this in our tourism development plan and direct staff to begin the process of identifying funding and negotiation. Alternatively, if it's not, we have no legal ability to negotiate any of this.
Okay.
The one thing I haven't heard, Mr. Chair, is the desire of the TDC Council to go from preliminary exploratory stage to we want to act as though this may be part of our plan, and let's identify everything that would go into this. If we were talking about doing co-op buys, if we're talking about going to a major event, we would do this. So if we would do it on a $600,000 event, I don't think there's any difference between this other than it's more money. So I think we definitely should require that. And ultimately, I think at this point, though, we probably do owe the BCC an up or down vote on whether the TDC wants it in their plan or not. It's not in the plan. I want to be very clear. The BCC would have to have a supermajority of vote to add it to the plan. If the TDC council doesn't, what I would recommend is you give them an up or down vote so they know exactly where you stand.
You know, when we first talked about this, we concluded that it was probably a good idea, but we had no information at all. Well, since that vote, lots has changed, and we've gotten a lot of information. We've got it from the company that's working on a strategic plan for us. These are pretty smart people. They're worldwide. They're not just, so I would think that this council, we needed to say, do we want to just even keep talking about it? I don't.
I'm okay, well, here's where, and I respectfully acknowledge your comments and agree with you somewhat, but I'm also curious I'm curious about what's behind door number 3. If it doesn't cost anything to take a peek at that, if for some reason we got to the point where we are, where there's nothing on the table, and then, you know, there's this opportunity out there that exists that could complement what we're good at doing here in our county, and it complements the vision of what our county is going to look like moving forward as far as tourism concerns. I don't want to close that opportunity, but I don't like the idea or the thought of someone that's going to push us into a posture to where it's either, you know, we're going to use all government dollars for this and it's all or nothing, because I don't think that that type of leverage exists. Now, I could be wrong, but I just think if we don't at least acknowledge that, you know, there's some risk here, I think it makes us look foolish if we just flippantly say, yeah, we're going to do it without doing take a good hard look at what that looks like. And to echo what Mr. Kellenberger said earlier, kind of the theme of his statement in the workshop was, we'll do what it takes, but it's, you know, what does that look like? What do you want? So if golf is something that we're going to incorporate into our vision in the future, I don't necessarily disagree that it doesn't complement what we do. I just feel like that there should be a partnership that exists, and we haven't seen that yet.
You're not going to see it. If we say no, that's a no. That's great. And then the PGA can say, oops, we just got a no. Let them come back and let them talk to the Hilton or Sandestin or St. Joe or us, and let them come back with some sort of a collaborative partnership. But we need to say no. I want to go back to my office. Some people just say, well, we'll have some more discussions. No, it was very clear in their email that they're not negotiable, so stop it. Just stop it.
Oh, Mr. Cass?
Yeah, I'd like to, let me just give my 2 cents on it, and I'm putting on my TDC hat. We continue to see lost revenues. And we're spending $7 million a year right now marketing in this destination and everything else. And if we were planning and looking at this as a business and what we're doing, we'd safeguard ourselves not to have one. Hope is not a good business strategy. And if you look at the history of the PGA, look at Pebble Beach. Nobody knew what Pebble Beach was prior to a PGA. And I can name 6, 7 other destinations of the same. It isn't about just the PGA. It's about putting this place on the map and securing us with future revenue growth. And I can't think of, if you're talking about building a performance arts center, I don't see heads and beds in bad Texas built around that, especially if it's not going to have first tier entertainment as we heard today. You know, I'm just saying in general, this is what the money is designed for and collected for, is to bring new, viable demographic business to the location. Take a hard thought of that before you say no, and at least contemplate going down the road. If it's negotiations, more definitions, we have a fiduciary responsibility to this community to exhaust those resources.
Sir? State your name.
My name is Phil Sharp, S-H-A-R-P-E, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I've not been to all the meetings on this topic, but I saw it when it first came up. I've worked with the PGA of America. I've worked with the PGA Tour, both for 20 years plus. The comments Commissioner LaCasse just made about Pebble Beach and the fact, I think your point was the tour coming in then grows that environment, that resort, that place. What actually happened with most of these places is they invested significant money to build golf courses that would attract the PGA of America or the PGA Tour, and I'm saying significant money to build these golf courses. So Pebble Beach has its natural capability there. Whistling Straits in Wisconsin is very similar. Pinehurst in Carolinas was built the same way. So I just kind of want to refute what you're saying a little. I have a different opinion, Commissioner, sorry. But I don't think the PGA Tour coming in actually creates that. I think they already have these courses that attract the tour or attract the PGA and others. I echo actually what Commissioner Taylor is saying. From when this first came up, I struggled to see what this would do for this county, and I'm still struggling to see that right now, other than it's an expenditure. And hearing you all discuss it like this, I agree with Commissioner Taylor. I think you're dancing around this. Somebody knocked on our door and said, would you like to buy this? And now we're trying to find a reason why we might want to buy it. We didn't go looking for this. So I think it's time to just say, no, not interested. And to your point, Commissioner, if the tour want to come back, let them come back with something. I also agree with this should be a private enterprise first and foremost, like the BMW Championship, like Wachovia and others, where they put the money up for these. So just, and I'm happy to chat with any of you more about this from my experience. Thank you.
Are there any additional questions, comments? Ms. Harris? Yes.
When this was first discussed, I called my godchild who plays pro golf, who was Justin Thomas' roommate all through college at Alabama, and until 2-3 years ago in Doral when they both got married and went on. I thought this was a great idea. I pushed it at the beginning until all the facts came out. Actually, there is no parking. The parking was disastrous at the last one. They parked all over one of the holes at Sandestin and tore the hole up. We don't really have the parking. We don't have the ability. We don't have a TDC executive director to manage this. I think our staff is managing the best they can day to day, everything they've already got going on. I felt really bad at the last meeting when Jennifer Steele found out her money for her thing that she does every year, the Songwriters Festival, might be cut this year. Because like Jim Bagby told y'all, this was when that started out, we were gonna do it just for short times, like 5 years, to help them build. But her Songwriter Festival brings a lot of people. Now you talk about an amphitheater. If you look at Facebook, you will read that everything at Seascape, and they're doing 7 to 8 concerts a year. Every one of them is sold out way in advance, and people are there when I take the golf cart to let some of our guests at Edgewater out so they don't have to walk. There are people begging to buy your tickets from you. Orange Beach does not have top-rated people, but their concerts are sold out all the time. I've been to them, they're sold out. They're not the A people. We're not gonna bring in here the A people. Seascape's not bringing in probably B people, but people are flocking to that. People come from Birmingham and Atlanta every year. They book reservations at Edgewater because I'm in walking distance to it, And we get tons of business and bed tax dollars from that. When I talked to Tiffany, Tiffany told me, Tiffany, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it would bring in like 2,200 bed nights. This golf tournament would. Mhm. Just the PGA. And how much
on
of that,
there.
how much of that would the TDC, wasn't it 43,000 that we would get?
49,000.
49,000 is all
what
we're
the
gonna get back.
Staff had told me. Now that's, so from the slide that Charles had given us, that we would have 20, just PGA staff alone would be the 2,400. That would equate to 49,000 in bed tax collection. Is
And
that- Oh, wait, yeah, because this is where, yeah, Kelly's provided that.
I'm the one that did the math.
oh, hang
Yeah.
on.
So I did the math. I took math for liberal arts. I never thought I would be doing math in front of people, just remember that. But, so what I did was the 2,800 room nights is what they talked about, and then averaged at a $300 rate night. And that gives you a percentage, and then I took whatever the 5% of that is, which averaged less than $50,000 back to TDT. Now, that does not include what you all, bed tax collectors, would make, because again, we only get the 5%. So that's where I came up with those numbers. Now, I'm not saying that there won't be additional people. Those were just the only room nights when you asked me about it, how many that he could say was 2,800, and that's what he could say. So that's where I came up with those numbers, because that's what I was asked to do this.
I don't see how we get our money back. I don't see how we get even a third of the bed tax money back here. Yes, businesses may make some money. If this comes against the FedEx tournament, just like Jim said, if they're playing a big tournament that is on TV, we're going to be on a pay-per-view channel or one of those off channels. We're not going to be on the big channel. We didn't build a golf course here like Pebble Beach, and I've been to Pebble Beach, but we didn't build that with this location. What we built was some golf courses to go along with the beach and the sun and what people really come here for. And I can tell you, people go to SEC football games. Brad goes, I go. Most of people here leave and go. People in Birmingham, Alabama go to either Alabama or Auburn games. Georgia fans go to Georgia games. This is the big time of football season. It's getting towards the end where you know they're not playing the Tulanes and the Southern Mississippis. They're playing the big Tennessee. They're playing the big rivals during this time of year. We're not going to get those people down here. And you've got September where now that they said they could possibly move it to September, you've got high school kids. You've got parents who have cheerleaders. They have sons playing football. They have sons playing junior high football. They have people on wrestling teams. They have soccer teams going this time of year. They're not coming down here for a small tournament when they can sit home and watch a big PGA tournament on TV and attend all their kids' activities. I thought it was a great idea. I really urge y'all to make a motion that we don't go forward with this, with what I've heard today from Brian and what I've heard we may need, and to think the people we're paying what I thought was an ungodly amount of money to do this. We need to concentrate on local things, and we need to help Jennifer Steele bring things in here. We need to have more money for that. We also need, and I know the North End has their separate bed tax, and I know we don't spend ours on them, but if we're going to do a great big something, it should be something that people in the North End want to be able to come down here and enjoy. And I don't know how we get anybody moving on 98. You couldn't move on 98 yesterday because of Mid-Bay Bridge. It had a problem. Our staff went home by 3:31. It was such a cluster down at Mid-Bay Bridge. But I really think we've talked about it and we've wanted it, and then we looked into it. But with what y'all got back as a letter that was just basically, this is it, they only have 12 months to decide where they're going, or 13 months to decide where they are going. We need to do them a favor. We need to cut them loose and let them go find another location that doesn't have to worry about the money, that's not looking for a sponsor, that has the money and wants them to come, and give them the chance to go ahead and find what they need and what suits them. But just to say we're not negotiating the price at all we might negotiate is the terms of the contract, the years. We have no idea what's going to happen here in 2 years. I mean, sales down here, well, I'm not just talking about bed tax, real estate sales are probably as bad as they've been in a long time because people don't know what's going to happen to this economy. You've got houses that have been listed for over 300 days, and they're not sold. So I think we need to concentrate on what we are good at. What we are good at is not PGA golf. What we're good at is courses like Sandestin, and then you have, of course, Camp Creek, which is a gorgeous, wonderful course. But we don't have the parking at Sandestin. We don't have the parking anywhere for all of this. And I just think y'all need to make a motion and cut this and let it go and let the PGA start concentrating on whoever they have as a backup plan to us.
Is there any interest of the board? What is the desire of the board? Mr. Sconiers recognized.
Clay, as far as action, if we're interested or not interested, what form of action should we take at this point? What motion? Do we need a motion or direct staff to tell them we're not
I think at this
interested or what?
point, if we don't take a motion, it's gonna keep circulating. Certainly, the Board of County Commissioners can choose to add it to the plan against or above your wishes, but if you want your wishes to be known, a motion is the right way to do it. And so the appropriate motion would be to either add it to the current tourism plan for Walton County, or alternatively, to decline to add it to the tourism plan and send that recommendation to the BCC.
Mr. Chair, I make a recommendation that we decline to add it to the tourism plan at this time.
I'd second that.
This motion on the floor to decline to add the PGA golf to the
Tourism plan.
tourism plan. And it has been seconded. We'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Taylor?
In favor? Aye.
Ms. Steele?
Aye.
Mr. Moffatt?
Aye.
Vice Chair WISE-COBLE?
Aye.
Mr. Sconiers?
Aye.
Ms. Edwards?
Aye.
Mr. Lacasse? Chair votes yes. Show the motion carries 7-1. 7 yeas, 1 nay.
So Mr. Algren will present that as the update to the BCC. Again, as a note, it would now take, at this point, based on that and the non-inclusion, if the BCC wishes to move forward, please note they can. You're only an advisory board, but it would now take a 4-1 or a supermajority vote of the board to move forward with it. And then it would also still take a budget amendment because it's not in your budget. So that's where we stand. You clear, Mr. Algren?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
All right, let's move into the director's updates. Let's start with marketing. Ms. Kelly Carter.
Hey there, Kelly Carter, Director of Marketing. Couple of things, won't take long, promise. Just wanted to chat about what we've done and what we're looking at in the future. So, of course, we're still continuing to encourage summer bookings, just like we did during the spring, and making sure that we're messaging to those people with those shorter windows, because, again, we're making sure that they still realize that their vacation is waiting, and that's one of the things that, with the stronger call to action, book your getaway before it gets away. So that's like a big, we're not normally that strong. We're more like, hey, we're here, what you want to do? But now we're like, book your getaway before it gets away. There's still time for your vacation, those kind of things, more hard-hitting. Moving on from there, we are going to Houston this week. We participate with the Emerald Lagasse Foundation in multiple things with them, and we're going to the Woodlands to participate with Emerald Lagasse and Aaron Sanchez and really talk to those people in the Woodlands where it's the highest household income and the people who spend the most amount of money when they come to South Walton. And we're going to go and talk to them and make sure they realize that, you know, we're here and wanting to have them come over. Lastly, one of the things that the team has worked on really hard is the Telly Awards. We won 4 Telly Awards. The Telly Awards focus on the quality of video itself, regardless of where it's viewed, but it includes content from commercials, marketing, social media, any kind of immersive experiences, and traditional television. And we were able to win 4 of those. One was for South Walton, Florida, Business on Par with Vacation is a gold telly. Best Seat in the House was a gold telly as well. Doing Nothing is Everything was one, and Your Getaway, Your South Walton. So all 4 of those won. The team worked very hard, and I'm very proud of all the things that they accomplished with that. With talking about awards, we also put in 10 awards for the Flagler Awards that will be part of the the Governor's Florida Conference in September. So maybe I'll have more to say about that. Just kind of keeping everything short and sweet. Event grants are with the scores. We're getting those done. I will bring those back to you next meeting, and it will be with what the scorers presented as who needs to move forward, and the staff will discuss what amount of money is awarded with those. Co-op sales are happening next week. I'm happy to say the BCC approved the media plan, and we're able to move forward with co-op sales. And just remember, co-op sales are your best way to partner with anything we've got going on. They're very cheap because we like to keep them very economical for you all to participate with them, but they're also, we do a really good job of being nimble and making sure that you're in all the right places if you participate with co-op awards or with co-op sales. Tourism talks, that's something that's still ongoing. Obviously, with everything that was going on, it was great to have Matt talk about what the importance of tourism is. You will see my face with the co-op sales because we sent that out, making sure everybody understood what co-ops were, and I was able to do that. We have just finished editing research and tips and trends with DSG, and Joseph was able to do that for us. Moving forward, we will work with Nicole in communications to talk about why hosting media is important. And lastly, we will do some things with Keep Walton County Beautiful and International Coastal Cleanup as a reminder to keep everyone, we call it the Know Before You Go campaign. That's also, Know Before You Go can mean anything, and that also goes back to something you said, Miss Amy WISE-COBLE, talking about a PR campaign, about all the different things you can do. Know Before You Go encompasses all of that. We talk about know where you're going to go to the beach, know your flag system, know how to treat the beach, know how you're going to get there, and know all of these different things. And so that's a digital campaign that we put out constantly. So we are telling people how to use the tram, how to be a good neighbor. Lastly, publications that we have going on. You should have a new meetings guide at your seat. That was a labor of love for the sales team. It's beautiful, and the sales team is very proud of it, and they worked really hard, so give them the kudos that goes there. Authentic Walton, its new guide is at the printer, and it is beautiful. You're really going to love it. The bridal guide is on its way to print as soon as we get a few more releases signed there. And then lastly, we have what we call the active guide, and active just means anything you can do out of doors in Walton County. So those are the things that marketing has going on, just a little bit, a little snapshot. So if anyone has any questions, let me know.
Ms. Edwards.
So I actually wanted to go back to Councilmember WISE-COBLE's question about adding in more and potential for revenue. So is the call to action for, as it relates to the budget, to have Kelly come back and maybe add in some more for her budget? Is that what you were referring?
I just think we need to talk about the revenue stream and a variety of ways that we can drive that. And, you know, I don't know, I think we start with Kelly. Do you feel like we can drive more business if you had a budget that is bigger than what you currently have?
What I can say is that the budget has not gone up with the amount, the marketing media budget has not gone out with the amount of people or the amount of rentals that have come online. I can always put more media out and put them in more places and make sure that we're talking to the right people. One of the things that I've done based on conversations I've had with you all is we've kind of went back to bread and butter, tried and true. Like we pulled everything together, we've looked at it, and I'm like, we're not doing Chicago, we're not doing anything like that right now for this summer. Right now, let's concentrate on what I call that circle. I want to make sure Atlanta, we're reminding them, Birmingham, Nashville, Houston, Dallas, New Orleans, and we put a big push out to those, which was what we consider our core markets, to make sure that they realize there's still an opportunity for them to book. Obviously, if I had some more money, I could do some more things like that. I just want to make sure that, we're very strategic in how we do it. I mean, I'm not just blanketing Atlanta. We're going into specific zip codes with those household incomes over 175, and we're making sure that we're talking to the correct people, and that's why we're so strategic in how we can do so much with little. But anything that you guys want me to do, I'm more than willing to do, and I can put together a plan, the Zender team, and I can put together a plan to have some more media running and some other things to do, and even talking about the things that Brian is doing as well, and put that together, and I can bring that back to you at the next meeting, if you would like.
I'd like to see that and some options, working with Zender about what some of those options may be and impressions and.
Yeah, we have an amazing media
programs.
team there, and we'll be able to pull some things together to do that, and I can definitely do that for you all.
Thank you.
And are we doing anything with AI yet?
So that's one of the things that has just been put on our website, and yes, it is coming. Basically, we have AI on there, and you come in and you're like, oh, I'm interested in this. The next time you come back, it pops it up, it builds you an itinerary, it does all these things. That's one of the things that I have in the works right now.
Perfect, thank you.
So, anything else? And like I said, I'm happy to meet with you guys on one-on-one. Like if you have specific things that, your rentals, maybe Ocean Reef is different than Royal Destinations, and it's different than Homeowners, which is different than all the rest of them. If you have different, and Sandestin as well, if you have different places you want to look at and different people you want to talk to, let me know, and we can see how we can work together to make sure that we're touching everybody that we should touch. Thank you.
Next, we'll go into communications. Nicole Everett.
Good morning, council members. It's a pleasure to be here today with you, Nicole Everett, Communications Director. Happy to give you a snapshot of this period, what's happening with communications. We've generated both print and digital for the period of April 1 through 30. 15 print and digital articles with close to 61 million in impressions and an earned media value of close to 563,000. And let me say that in all of these activities, this earned media activity, these are all complements to what happens on the marketing side as well. When you talk about the reach and the share of voice that we're trying to reach, those are actually complementing and extending that reach and that share of voice in top-tier markets. As Kelly said, very strategic in what we do. We work together. Several of you met Adele Grobler, who was here this morning with Turner PR, who is our national PR agency, works very hard with us on a strategic plan, complementing what we do on the marketing side to reach those audiences that are our demographics that we're trying to reach and bring in money and activity, and just share the stories that inspire people to travel and to come here into Walton County. So it's, as Kelly said, not just kind of like, let's get what we can get. You can see in some of the titles that we have here in these articles that we're very widespread and who we're trying to reach, that all bring audiences, all bring visitors to this market. So Adele is here, in fact, with several of her members on kind of their own destination immersion excursion, I like to say. And they're going out in the market right now, or the destination right now, to really evaluate what's happened in the last few years as they do their pitches to their own incredible resource of travel writers and journalists, and that we do that as well when we go, not just bringing those journalists and travel writers here and editors, but that we also go out as well. In fact, when Kelly talks about going to Woodlands next week, we've got her set up with several desk side, interviews, that we were able to generate through our relationship with Turner. So it's everything to be as strategic and reaching and getting the greatest value as we can in our marketing and public relations efforts. So you have a little bit of a view here of what we're working on. We actually just, since this report was prepared, we've got a travel writer coming in to Authentic Walton, specifically for Authentic Walton next week. At the end of the month, June 23 through 25, that's their focus. We just finished up an excursion, a fam trip that you see, Artful Escapes, which had a fantastic exposure. We really expect some good coverage from that. And you also can see some of our previous titles, as I said. So, and while you're looking at publications, it's not just externally who we're trying to reach, but internally as well. Many of you are featured, our new TDC members in our Walton County line that just came out. So if you haven't seen a copy, please grab one. But we also work very hard to make sure our own communities and our own stakeholders and partners understand what we're trying to do and the value that we bring in all of our efforts. But it's incredibly important that we are good stewards of the monies that we bring in, and that we're doing the best to make this the travel destination for the audiences that we want. So, any questions?
Ms. Edwards?
Thank you so much for all of this. I was just going to mention, again, for our strategic planning, if you could work with Turner PR to see what all we would need in the case of a storm from a PR perspective and the cost associated with that for us to discuss, I'd really appreciate it.
And actually that is included in part of their contract.
Okay.
They are a partner, and Zender is, by the way, as well. So we have them strategic communications, and especially on the emergency services side, but also crisis communications are part of the services they provide under our contract. They evaluate our crisis communications plan. They have come, in the last visit was 2 years ago, but work with us on our media and relations strategies. And that's overall crisis communication, but those are levels you have to evaluate when there is a crisis. So sometimes it is weather related, but sometimes it's other situations as well. So that is included in our ongoing contract with public relations. And then additionally, both Zender and Turner PR are part of the emergency crisis plan, a response plan, so that when we have a significant storm-related event, they are both on alert for managing any communications that we are not able to handle ourselves, or will escalate, whether it's social media or whether it's outreach to national media as well. That's something that they are already contracted to do with us and include it. But absolutely, we'll evaluate that as well.
And I'll have a follow-up on that too, for any additional media buys at that point, and this is just just a question in general of, do we have money ready available to facilitate and make those buys quickly in the event that occurs?
Yes, ma'am. For all of that, we have a plan in place that, depending on what it is, and we're in the process of updating it. This is when we update it. And if something catastrophic was to happen, we do have that. And then there's, the way the reserves are funded, there's some line items in there. I don't know exactly how much that is, because it hasn't, I don't know, it's just a large amount of money, but there should be plenty of money in there to do that. Additionally, Zender and I also put together crisis communication for you all as well. So while Turner is working on what we say, Zender is helping me give you guys information as stakeholders, that how you can answer it to make it easier for you as well. So we've got all of that in place.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
And I feel fairly comfortable saying that if the worst were to happen, that Visit Florida is going to step in and do what they've always done in years past. Okay. You're welcome. Anyone else? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Everett. Is Ms. Morris here? No. Okay. Are we good? Did we cover that? Mr. Kellenberger, beach operations, anything else you want to add?
No, sir. Well, just a few things. Ribbon cutting, or I'm sorry, groundbreaking at the Kellogg facility on June the 11th. It's at the corner of Nursery and Indian Women Road. I think all of you got invitations. Should have the address on it. Ribbon cutting at Creighton Central to be planned for later this month. I haven't got the date just yet. We're waiting on the CO. And then another groundbreaking at the Driftwood parking facility in Miramar Beach, probably in about 2 weeks. 2.5 weeks, you'll get an invite. I invite you all to come out personally. It'll be a good time and a good opportunity to see what we do. Other than that, the other projects are on schedule. I got a new round of projects that I'm fixing to start, design and permitting, and that's it. So any questions of me?
So, Ms. Edwards?
Is there anything that we can do from the council perspective that if, you know, the trucks need to be purchased, we've allocated it into our budget to speed that along for you so that we're not having to experience another situation where we're missing out on those
Nope,
items during
I'm
season?
working through the processes the best I can, and probably needs to be left up to me, so as not to create any other frustrations. So, no, I got notice that the explanation on the transportation vans, and like I say, when they're here, we'll get into a soft opening or a soft rollout. And, you know, the transportation program has been postponed for different reasons over the last year and a half, 2 years. The full blown or the east-west routes, a little bit more time ain't gonna kill us. And so, you know, a lot of times, just gotta work things out yourself. And it's better for the long term.
Thank you.
I appreciate the offer.
Anyone else? Seeing no further business, we'll show this meeting adjourned. Oh,
I know, surprise.
you were quick.
So JL had reached out and asked us to make a motion or to discuss the strategic planning dates and workshops. So their suggestion was to set up monthly, about an hour, hour and a half. I have concerns about the overall expense of that and then dragging it out. I think we would be better to follow a similar format to what you all have done in years past, of maybe doing a day or 2 days, 2.5 days, schedule some time. I know, I'm not adding more time, Tim. But to schedule time succinctly and to really focus. I think we've discussed some direction of where we would want to go strategic planning, but I just think that in terms of bandwidth, it might be a little excessive to do that. So I'd love for us to schedule a date. I do believe that our next July meeting, and I don't know if that's too soon, is a workshop, but that might be a good place that it's already on the calendar to begin those discussions.
Yeah, I think it's up to you all in terms of how you would like to see that cadence, to your point, right? Do these need to be, you know, meetings that are in addition to your standing monthly meetings? Do these need to be meetings that are held separately? Do we want this to be, you know, this, because the steering committee is intended to be an ongoing process. So I don't know that you could accomplish the intent of the steering committee by sitting down in a room, you know, for 1 or 2 days, because the steering committee is an ongoing thing that lasts the duration of the process of strategic planning.
What's the intended process then?
So for the steering committee.
Well, yeah, or from the contract of start to finish.
Right,
Is it
so yeah, it's a 6-month process from start to finish is kind of what the contract was. You know, the intent of the steering committee is to kind of guide the conversations and be the facilitators and to move the project along during the course of the duration that we're doing the strategic planning. That is separate from the public workshops that we've scheduled as part of the contract.
6 months is a long time. I'll open it up to the council. Those are my opinions, I think.
I think what we might be able to do is let's hear them out. Let's schedule the first meeting with them for them to talk directly to us about their expectations from a steering perspective. And then, you know, I'm going to have to hear more about it. But I certainly see an efficient session for a day or two, like we used to do it with them in the room, capturing all the thoughts, capturing all the ideas, getting those rolled up. I think there's certainly merit to that, 100%, but maybe we should just hear direct from them. That's what we're paying them for, is exactly what they're expecting from us. Why, what is the role of meeting every few weeks during the process? You know, what exactly are we steering monthly? We just kind of, I think, want to all be an active participant in the strategic plan and the plan for the future. So does that work? And we'll do, so could they be, I think our meeting's July 2nd, is that correct?
I'll reach out to Scott and the team this
So
afternoon.
maybe just have them as a part of that meeting, talk to us about what their thoughts are.
Certainly. My pleasure.
Okay.
Anyone else? Show this meeting adjourned.